wonder if I have enough money for a house. I don't think I do. What do people do if they want to buy something that's really expensive? What do you guys think? I'm so excited that I'm going to read with you today because we are going to figure out what people do. My name is Mrs. Lawson, and I'm so excited you're here to read with me today, fourth graders. Let's go ahead and check out what we're doing. So we are reading Using Money, and our learning intention for today is we are learning how to use details and examples to explain the main idea in the text. We know we are successful when we can find details in the text, identify the main idea of the text, and identify those supporting details. So we're going to be using this chart today, our main idea and key details chart. If an author's purpose is to inform, then the text will have main ideas that are supported by details. When an author's main purpose is to persuade, readers will find a clear opinion expressed. So today in this book, we're mostly being informed is what the author wants. We're learning about money. So we're going to find main ideas that are supported by details. So vocabulary, Miss Lawson's favorite. So what is this word, fourth graders? Right, it is purchases. So most people need to borrow from a bank in order to make really big purchases. So what do you think that means? What is a purchase? Yeah, good job. It is to acquire or get something by paying for it or buying it. Good job. What about this word? Yeah, you got kind of a compound word here, overseas. So the group that oversees the bank system and makes sure that it works well is, so what would that mean if you oversee something? Yeah, you supervise, you watch or look over it. You're making sure everything's going okay. So for foundational skills today, we are learning about words from French. So many words have come to English from other languages, such as French. So here is a piece of the text today, and let's see if we can find the word that comes from the French language. Defaulting on a loan can cause bad credit, which means you cannot be trusted to pay back what you borrow. Yes, you guessed it. It's the bold and underlined word. So let's use a dictionary to check the origin of credit. So we're going to go to the dictionary, and this is what it looks like. You've got your word up here and how to say it, and we figure out what it means. It's a reputation of solvency and honesty. It's entitling a person or business to be trusted in buying or borrowing. So down here is the origin. So you're going to have to scroll down if you're looking at the dictionary online. So it says it was first recorded in 1525. It's from Middle French, and it means belief, trust, reputation, esteem, money lent or borrowed. So that fits pretty well with what it means in English too. It means if you have good credit, we can trust you. You're going to pay us back. If you have bad credit, we don't know about you. You might not be able to be trusted. You might not pay back that money. So have you ever heard of this word, fourth graders? It is sabotage. It's a weird word, sabotage. So if we look down here, this is another word from the French language, and it means to strike, shake up. So let's look at what it means in English. It means you're underhanded. It's any underhand interference with production or work, or an undermining of a cause. So that means you are undermining or you're messing with what somebody's doing. You're trying to make them not be successful. So here's a bonus for you today, fourth graders. Can you use a dictionary to find the origin of the word ambulance? I know you can do it. For your foundational skill on Seesaw today, you are going to be given these 12 definitions. And what you need to do are descriptions, I guess. So you're going to write a list word for each description. So if you do this on Seesaw, you will just drag the words. So light or yellowish hair, you'd find the correct word and put it there. Again, you can use a dictionary or a thesaurus to help you. I do that all the time if I don't understand a word. It helps you a lot. Let's go ahead and get started reading today, fourth graders. We are reading about how do people get money for really big purchases, my big problem at the beginning of this video. So let's see what they say about it. Have you ever wondered how people get enough money to buy a house? Most people need to borrow money from a bank in order to make really big purchases. I know some of you guessed that. Great job, fourth graders. In other words, they get a loan from the bank and they promise to pay it back in a certain amount of time. With a house, this loan is called a mortgage. There are special student loans for people who want to go to college. Someone also might need a loan to start a business. There are two parts to paying back a loan. The person must pay back the borrowed money, which is called the principal. In addition, a person must pay interest on the principal. Remember, the bank is a business and it makes money by charging interest. So let's look at this problem. Jasmine wants to start a business making cupcakes. She borrows $10,000 for 5 years at 7% interest. How much will Jasmine pay in interest if she takes all 5 years to pay back her money? Well, to solve this, you take the original amount borrowed and multiply it by 7/100. And then you multiply it by 5 years because you're paying it over 5 years. And then you would have to figure out how much does she owe altogether. You'd have to add back in that original $10,000 that she paid. That's a good math problem. Let me know the answer to that, fourth graders. I know you can do it. So right here we have Ben Bernanke. The group that oversees the banking system, including interest rates on loans, and makes sure that it works well, is the Federal Reserve System, also known as the Fed. The current chairman or leader of the Fed is Ben Bernanke. President George W. Bush appointed him to this position in 2006. Bernanke replaced Alan Greenspan, who had been the Fed chairman for 20 years, in 2010. President Barack Obama reappointed Bernanke for another 4-year term. Why? What happens when people cannot pay back a loan? Oh no. If you borrow money and cannot pay it back, you default on your loan. Defaulting on a loan can cause bad credit, which means you cannot be trusted to pay back what you borrow. A bank will be less likely to give you a loan next time if you default. Do you remember what a budget is? When you borrow money for really big purchases, make sure you have enough money to make payments. Find out if your loan has an interest rate that will increase at some point. If so, make sure you have money in your budget to cover the higher payments when the rate increases. If a homeowner defaults on a mortgage, the bank takes the house. This is called foreclosure. In general, most people do not default on home loans. Since 2005, however, there has been an increase worldwide in the number of foreclosures. In the United States alone, there has been over 10 million in that time. The case study on page 37 explains why. So if we look at this graph a little closer, it says, how do the details in the graph help you understand the impact of subprime mortgage loans? Well, we don't know what those really are yet, so let's keep reading to figure it out here, and then let's look back. So this is the case study they talked about, foreclosure. Prior to the 1990s, banks had strict rules about who could borrow money to buy a house. People needed to have good credit, and they needed to make a down payment or pay some money at the time they got the loan. However, banks began to make it easier to borrow money. Banks started lending to people with bad credit, and they did not always require a down payment. These were called subprime mortgages. Banks also offered very low interest rates for the first year or two. Millions of people jumped at the chance to own a home. But many did not figure out what they would have to pay once that rate increased. For some people, this monthly payment doubled. As a result, many people could not pay their mortgage. So let's look back. Now we know a subprime mortgage is when you don't have to make that original payment on your house, and you might not have the best credit. So how do these details in the graph help us understand the impact or how important this subprime mortgage loan was for people who took it out? What happened to them? Oh my goodness. I'm going to pause this video. Oh my goodness. And give you a second to look it over. All right, fourth graders. Hopefully you looked this over and you saw, wow, this goes up a lot. Over 3 million people had foreclosures in 2008. So that means they probably had one of those subprime mortgages that after a few years of buying their house, their payments went up and they couldn't afford it. So that leads us into our next question. What is it important for a borrower to know about interest rates? So those people, let's look back. I don't want to say it for you. It says right here, banks also offered a very low interest rate for the first year or two. Millions of people were like, yes, let's do it. But they did not figure out what they would have to pay once the rate went up. And it almost doubled for some people. So it's very important when you borrow money to know what are they charging you, because you've got to be able to pay that back. All right, let's go look back at page 34 and find the main idea. So it says, how do people get money for really big purchases? So I'm going to give you a second to reread this page on your own and see if you can figure it out, fourth graders. So hopefully you reread this, and it says, have you ever wondered how people get enough money to buy a house? Most people need to borrow money. And then it continues talking about that. So our big idea is people usually need to borrow from a bank to buy houses. So that is our main idea. So go ahead and get that written down on your main idea, and then we will start looking for supporting details. So down here, it says, in other words, they get a loan from the bank and they promise to pay it back in a certain amount of time. With a house, this loan is called a mortgage. So we just figured out that a loan for a house is called a mortgage. So it's important to know the name. Then we also can go back and find some more supporting details. So take a minute, see, can you find the next supporting detail, fourth graders? So hopefully you kept reading and you figured out there are two parts to paying back a loan. The person must pay back the borrowed money, which is called the principal. So that is our next big point. The borrower must pay back the principal, the money borrowed. But is that all they have to pay back? No, there's more. It says, in addition, a person must pay interest on the principal. Remember, the bank is a business. So that last point is the borrower must pay back the interest, the amount the bank charges for using their money. So now we could write this all up and create our own summary of that page of the text. Good job, fourth graders. You did it. For your next question, it says the text on page 34 explains that there are two parts to a loan, the interest and the principal. How are the interest and the principal alike, and how are they different? So let's look back. It says right here, let's reread that one more time, because good readers always go back in the text and reread. The person must pay back the borrowed money, which is called the principal. In addition, a person must pay interest on the principal. So what is alike about them? You got to pay both of them. If you're borrowing money, you have to pay both pieces of the loan. But how are they different? What do you guys think? Hopefully you went back in that text and it's exactly what it says. The principal is what you borrowed and the interest is different because that's what the bank is charging you. You never use that money. It's an additional cost. So it's time for your reading response, fourth graders. Elaborate. So tell me more on the reason why people pay interest when they buy a house. So it says, look for details in the text that support the idea of interest. So you're telling me people do borrow money, but tell me the reasons why they borrow money. Highlight or underline your evidence. Thanks so much for coming and reading with me today, fourth graders. See ya next time.